in the book about the third chapter about Constitution, I think Obama mentioned this will be, area of consensus. Especially, they are very proud of the Constitution and the constitutional first 10 amendments, right? The first 10 amendment is also called the Bill of Rights, and really protecting a lot of the basic human rights. So one of the, the very first amendment is about freedom of speech, but that's the second one. What's the first freedom? The very first one. Let's go down a little bit to the amendment number 1. Establishment of religion. So here, I think we have one interesting question. Freedom of religion. But actually there are two parts. One is what? The establishment. Second one is free exercise. Okay. First one said make no law. Means you cannot establish a state religion. I think this was the background from the Puritanic history. People escaped Europe, coming to the U.S. for religious freedom. So they don't want government said this is the state religion, because in Great Britain they have the Anglican Church. In France you have what? Catholics, right? So in the United States, most of the religions are tolerated, and the government will not say which one is the state religion. So that's we call establishment, but it also means what? Non-establishment. Government shall not establish a religion. So here we have the longest English word. Establishment means you believe it is okay for government to set up a religion. So if you are like that, you are establishmentarian. You believe it's okay, right? But if you do not, this establishmentarian. If you're against those who doesn't want government to establish a religion, you are anti this establishmentarianism. Okay? So you have the longest English word there. Anti this establishmentarianism. There are people who are disestablishmentarian, right? Disestablishmentarian means I don't want government, for example, in Taiwan, I don't want government to allow school to teach a religion. I don't want that. So that's you are disestablishmentarian. But some people say it is okay. Every religion is teaching someone to do good things. So it is okay to have, the Buddhist teaching, the 10 commandments or other things hanging in the classroom. Then you are anti this establishmentarianism. Okay. In the final of this class, I think anyone who cannot pronounce the word will not pass the course. Okay. No, I'm kidding, but this is an interesting word, right? Anti this establishmentarianism. So that's the first part. You do not want government to impose something on you. Free to choose. Always remember, that's part of the American tradition. The second one is we call free exercise, right? You cannot prohibit the free exercise of the religion. Here, I think we have some questions. If I believe in Mormon, in Islamic teaching. I also believe in the teaching of what? Polygamy. Can I do that? You understand polygamy? Oh, everybody understand what? Polynomial? Huh? What is poly? Many? Polygamy versus monogamy? I think HBO still have something on this, right? What's that? A Man with 3 Wives? What's the name of this series in HBO? Big Love. Yeah. Okay. So I want to have big love. Can I have 3 wives or 4 wives? According to the civil law? No. But this is my religious teaching. And if you do not allow me to do that, you are violating the free exercise of my religion. What do we do? Or, for example, another religion said, hey, you need to have marijuana. You know, having marijuana gets you into a state of ecstasy that you can communicate with God. 要吃点大麻药才能跟上帝有沟通 right? Otherwise, I mean, you know, you're too preoccupied with all the worldly affairs. So have some marijuana and, you know, into a state of forgetfulness, then you can communicate with God. And say, oh, according to my teaching, I should have marijuana. But the government said, no. It's the government does not allow my free exercise of my religion. Okay, give you one more example of the free exercise of religion. What happened? You know, a lot of religion have what we call sacrifice. Sacrificing animals. Now, today in Taiwan, we have annual meetings or annual kind of festival, especially in Hsinchu. We have, the first time when I came back to Taiwan, I noticed we have a lot of, we call ga pig, 神猪. Okay? Now, the way we feed the pig, right, may be inhumane. Okay, so you offer that as a sacrifice. So some people said, you should not do that in the future. But this is my religion. I believe in offering. Okay, pig, I think it's okay. But what happened today if some religion said we believe in offering dogs as sacrifice? Because we think dogs are more loyal. And I want to be loyal to my God. So I offer a dog. I mean, of course, you know, you're going to be arrested. But that's my religion. I mean, so far I know there is no religion teaching you to offer a dog. But what happens if there is one? Okay, so here, when we talk about freedom, remember, even in Obama, he mentioned about what? Compromise. Freedom of speech. Last week, we talked about what? About the pornography things. We talk about, you know, all kinds of advertisement. So at least this is something you should not do. So free exercise, you cannot violate the regular civic law. Okay, so that's a very important. So freedom of religion and then freedom of speech. Of course, some people said you can never yell. What, in a theater or like in this classroom? Fire? Okay, that's fine. I think I violated my freedom of speech when I was a high school student. I don't like my physics teacher. Okay, and one day I was telling the truth, and every student left the classroom and said, "Someone farted." 有人放屁，好臭. Okay, so everybody just left the classroom, right? And then the teacher there, you know, he was the one who farted. So he sent me to my principal, okay. But I That's why I have freedom of speech, right? I was telling the truth, and it was smelly, okay? But Yale fire, if it's not a real fire in a theater, we have seen a lot of places, what do we call stampede? You know what is stampede? Like you being stepped down by wild horses running. So stampede is like everybody is trying for the exit, and then the fire didn't kill anyone. It's people stepping on people. So sometimes you need to be very careful about your speech. Okay, that's the easy part. I think we all know freedom of press. Or here, I don't like the translation, 出版, right? But freedom of press today, we basically talk about what? Journalists, right? 新闻自由. So you can report, but can you report? Okay, here, two things. Something about national security. That might have some problem. But then again, there are governments who use national security as an excuse of hiding information, like Vietnam War or other type of war. Actually, you have a lot of, we call, soldier being killed, but they try to hide the facts and saying this is national security. So where do you draw the line? Okay, one more on this freedom of press. What about privacy? Okay, can we report on individuals? And can individuals say, hey, this is a private matter. You cannot report. Okay, so question here. In terms of privacy, okay, first question, Huang Zijie. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong one. Wu Yudong, 你在吗？好。吕佩轩。Okay, now private matter. Okay, who is it on? Is it on? Okay. Now let me ask you the first question about privacy. Can politicians have privacy? You understand privacy? For example, if we do have someone a politician who said, hey, even I have an extramarital affair, that's my business, you should not report it. Like, I happen to take one of my secretary to use a bathroom in a hotel. Right? But that's my private matter. So when you report, that's not freedom of press, but violation of privacy. What's your view on this? Okay, so public figure do not have privacy. Okay, so public figures including politicians, including what? Who else? 周杰伦, entertainers. Who else are politicians? Are public figures? Sports figures? I mean, professional player. Are they public figures? Okay. Now, what about university professors? Are we public figures? Okay, for example, we do have some professor appearing on television a lot, right? They talk about things, and then we said, we found out, he was cheating his wife. Now, okay, if how many times a professor has to appear on television to become a public figure? Like if he only appear once a month, is that a public figure or not? How do you define a public figure? For example, okay, here, you as a Tsinghua student, are you a public figure? No? Okay, here, there is an accident outside. You went out, you saved someone, okay, and it's on the headline of the newspaper. Does that make you a public figure? Yes. Okay, so don't ever try to save someone. Because one day we'll find out they try to report something good about you, and then they find out, she happened to be there because she was meeting, she was the third party of, a couple. She was involved in this. Okay. You said, wait a second, that's my own private matter. Yeah, I was seeing someone with a wife, but, that's my private matter. But why do you want to save someone and make yourself look like a heroine, right? Suddenly you become a heroine. People say, oh, this heroine actually have, we call, feet of clay. Well, how do we translate this into Chinese? 就是泥巴做的脚 means you're not perfect. You actually have some weak spots. Okay, so you are doing good thing, helping people, saving life, and then people, oh, she happened to be there because she was going to meet her. She was the mistress of someone. Okay, being reported. I'm sorry, you're a public figure. You make yourself into a public figure almost. Okay. Now, can the press come to Tsinghua University and then taking a photo here and then put on the first page tomorrow? And you said, no, hey, I don't want to be seen, sitting with this girl because my girlfriend would suspect. But sorry, it's there. What do you do? Is that private matter? You don't want to be photographed? Do we have the right to refuse to be photographed? Or more and more, right? You on Taipei streets, you look at the screen, oh, you're there. Huh? So there are a lot of issues here. There are so many rulings trying to define whether you are private or public. But usually someone who does not intend, has no public appearance, try to live a private life, and there's no reason, to expose certain people. But I think there is one group area, especially in the high-tech company, all these businessmen, are they private people? Their name appear on newspaper a lot, so maybe they are no longer private citizen. They are public. So privacy, there is some problem with this freedom of press and privacy. You need to pay attention, and then the right of peaceful assembly. Okay, if you're not violent, you just try to protest, you should have the right. But now, can Tsinghua student went to the presidential office here, your president, and have an assembly outside the office protesting the high tuition hike, the tuition hike next year? Maybe, are you going to have a tuition hike next year? 明年学费会涨吗？一定会涨 right? But some people say, hey, enough is enough. Okay, so you have peaceful assembly outside the president's office here, 校长门口, or outside the Ministry of Education. No problem. How about throwing eggs? Throwing eggs is okay because you're not killing people, right? Unless you're throwing hard-boiled eggs. But what about throwing eggs that are being stinky now after, like 20 days? There is a market for that kind of eggs. especially during protests, people purposely let the eggs got rotten so that you can sell those rotten eggs and throw to the rotten politician, and stick on them. It's not just smelly, but it's bad. Okay, but you have to hit the person. Okay, so that's assembly. Peaceful. Remember that word, peaceful. Okay, so you can do that, peaceful, but not violent. And finally, also you have the right of petition to the government, right? So those are the First Amendment, and then important one was the first. The second one we talked about this already. The right to bear arms. The third one is the useless one, the most useless one, but there's some historical things. It's called quartering of soldiers. Means people say, hey, sorry, we are having a particular kind of military campaign, and we need to use your home to station our soldiers. No, in America, they said, no, you cannot do that. Of course, some of you might have seen some movies about the policemen want to borrow your home to set up some kind of facility to monitor, a drug dealer across your street. Hey, you can say no. But most people say, "Oh, this is exciting." Okay, yeah. Okay, I already suspected him. Yeah, pretending, right? But you can refuse soldiers stationed in your house. That's so colonial. Also, the history was colonial. That one is not almost no cases now on the Third Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is the most important one, because this is the one tell you that you cannot be searched or being seized. Something should be unreasonable search and seizure. Means you without a warrant. You understand warrant? The court issues something so they can come to your home and search. Okay? This is why our teachers, high school teachers, middle school teacher, always violate your rights. They search your school bag during the recess, or they still do that. Like when you have a gathering in the auditorium, 在礼堂有大聚会。And all the students went there, and the disciplinarian, the 教官, right, went to the classroom and searched all kinds of things. Now, your things cannot be searched. That's even you look at some of in American high school, they have all this. What do we call? Lockers outside the classroom, right? You cannot just say, hey, I want to search the classroom. You have to have some. You cannot just secretly open students' locker room to see what they have inside. Okay, so that's very important in terms of illegal search. You cannot search people illegally or seize something. So we call illegal seizure. Grab something away, saying, hey, this is good evidence. No, you have to have a court order, or you get a warrant from the court. So those two are very important. And then the third one is to have those things being seized, search people, arrest people without a warrant. So those very important rights, the Fourth Amendment rights. The fifth one is the also individual, very important one. This is the one we call self-incrimination. Okay? Self-incrimination. So what is incrimination? Self-incrimination. It's like you said something that the court will use against you to prove you're guilty. So what do? You don't want to say anything that will make yourself guilty. Yeah. What is it? Okay, you being arrested by the policeman. Policeman said, yeah, I need to take a record. I need to write down what happened. And maybe they can prove you guilty. And what do? You hide the evidence, but they keep wanting you to tell them the story. So what do? You lie. Hey, don't lie, because when you lie, the first one, and then you lie the second one, the lie just couldn't be consistent. So don't lie. Don't you ever lie, because the lawyers, for example, you lie. You say, I wasn't there. I was in McDonald's. Okay, they say, when were you in McDonald's? You say, around that time. They say, on which floor? And then they begin to ask you, what did you have? And then say, you have someone with you. You say, yeah, my friend was there. The friend said, were you on the first or second floor? Said, first. I'm sorry. Your friend said third floor. Right? So don't lie, because when you lie, the best strategy is what? I'm not going to say anything. I have to have my lawyer here. Okay? Because you don't want to incriminate yourself. So self-incrimination means you don't have to say anything. I have the right to remain silent. Right? But sometimes people don't know. When they're being arrested, they will say, don't say anything. And they said, well, we don't know the rights. Okay, that's the reason the policemen, especially those who cannot remember to pronounce your rights, they have to put it in their cap, like take the cap down. You have the right to remain silent, right? Anything you say can be used and will be used against you. You have the right to the counsel. Tell you your rights. Okay, what do we have that? That self-incrimination means you don't say anything. You have the right to remain silent, but this right that has to be read to you. Otherwise, anything you say is illegal. It cannot be used in the court because it's not, we call, due process. 程序正义没有. No due process. So this is what we call self-incrimination. Right to remain silent, right? And more importantly, this right has to be read to you. If the policeman forgot to read this right to you, then anything you said can be thrown out in the court. Now, where do we get this? What do we call this right? We call Miranda right. Miranda is the person, okay, who was not told about his right. So later he petitioned, and finally the U.S. Supreme Court made the decision. Every person who was arrested should be read of his or her right to remain silent, to have the right to counsel and all that. So that's very important. But Miranda himself, this is the beauty of the American legal system, is all those rights, all these rulings. People have the right to a counsel, to a lawyer. People have the right to be read of their, no self-incrimination. All came from little criminals, not the best person. These are all criminals. They're being arrested. They are not what do we call, model citizen of the society. But somehow, because of their case, they left their name like Miranda. Okay, Miranda was in and out of the prison. And the last time when he was shot in a bar, he was selling a little card of Miranda's right and has his signature. Where do you get your income? He doesn't have a job, so he sell this like a little card printing, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be read, and then he signed his name like, hey, this is me, me, I got you all this right. So, I'm the real person for this. Almost like in Taiwan, what do we call? Like someone's 中文应该是怎么讲？就是靠着他拿到的这个条款啊 ，Miranda 条款。So he signed like, oh, the real person signed this. So when he was killed in a bar, right, and then they find the criminals, and then they read the criminal his Miranda's rights. So the story is very interesting. The guy who helped people to get the right to be read, and he sold his rights in a little card with his signature, and then he was killed in a bar, and then the police came and read the Miranda's right to his murderer. Okay, so that's a story about this. So self-incrimination, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right not to incriminate yourself. Okay, and also here said you can have the assistance of your defense counsel. You can hire an attorney, and if you cannot afford one, the state will provide you one. Okay, so that's the reason we have a lot of we call public defenders. Okay? A lot of lawyers started by helping people, so they become we call public defender. 公共辩护律师。Okay, public defender, and I think our former president used public defender, right? And our former first lady now is saying she is not going to hire her own attorney. But if you don't have one because you were poor, then the government will provide one for you. Again, this kind of government public defender came from what? Came from a petty thief. Okay, a thief. He didn't know how to defend himself. He cannot afford to hire an attorney, so he borrowed all the books, legal books, to read how do I write a petition, how do I write an appeal, And finally, people said, hey, this guy is not educated, but he tried very hard. So at least, he should have the right to a counsel, to a lawyer. So that's very important in terms of protecting people if you cannot afford one. The Americans' attorneys are very expensive, right? If you talk to them, just for getting some advice, they charge you about $250 to $300 an hour US, which means $7,000 to $10,000 an hour. Okay, just sitting there like, okay, you already lost, a few $100 here, right? So think of this: 1 hour talking to the attorney, $250 to $300. That is regular. Okay, they're more expensive. Like big time lawyer. I don't know how much they charge. Maybe it's $1,000 an hour. Who knows, right? So that's a very expensive. So little guys should be provided one. Okay. Number 7 also is important. It's about the we call excessive values in terms of especially you have to have a trial by the jury. The trial by jury should be protected. So here, recently we have one country also introduced jury system, right? Which one? I remember Taiwan wants to know. I don't think we trust our jury. Do you trust our jury system? No? So Jiawei, I'm sorry. 郑君哲. Yeah. Do you think we should have jury system in Taiwan? Yeah, do you understand jury? Those 12 people sitting there, 12 angry men. There was a movie called 12 Angry Men. But do you trust those jurors? Do you trust those? But you rather trust a judge. Oh, but this judge is a Zainan. How can you trust him? He doesn't even know what happened outside the world. Right? No, I mean, don't you think you should be judged by real people? People like you and me, instead of those people in a robe, pretend to be very serious and doesn't know what's happening outside? 你喜欢那种不食人间烟火的法官吗？ Right? Well, why don't we just trust our own people? We call peers, right? 同辈. So that they understand. For example, you have to go to work. And if you're late again today, your boss will fire you. So you speed up. And this is the third time you speed. So you have to pay a fine, or they try to evoke your license. You say, if I don't have a driver license, I lost my job. But the judge may say, I think you can take the bus. You say, hey, I am a delivery person. Right? So you carry the goods to deliver by bus. So sometimes I'm just trying to say some of the judges are not connected to the real world. Okay, but can be ordinary citizens are not connected to the real world. Who knows? But they do have the jury system in the United States. And most of the time we have this we call unanimity. In terms of a decision by the jury. So what do we mean by unanimity here? Wu Kai. Yeah, what is unanimity? Unanimous decision? Unanimous. That's anonymous. That's anonymous, like, you write something but not using the real name, right? Unanimous. Unanimous means everybody say yes. That's unanimous. What do we call in Chinese? 一致决, right? Everybody agree. There is no dissenting votes. Okay, now, in jury trial, a lot of time, because it requires unanimity. So one person can, remember last week we talked about what? Veto. You can veto a decision by just saying, no, I think he's innocent. And people have to convince you, no, he's guilty. You said, because I have been paid by him, so I would say he's innocent. So unanimity is important. But this is we call a hung jury. When you cannot have unanimity, we call hung, H-U-N-G. What do you mean by hung jury? To hand someone something, to hung, 悬而不决. Okay, so means you didn't reach a consensus, you didn't reach unanimity, you have a hung jury, the guy can go free. Okay? So, right now, 12 members in a jury. So right now, some states say unanimity is just such a high standard. So why don't we can have 11 to 1 or 10 to 2? The most the lowest threshold I have seen right now, I think one case in Georgia, 9-3 can be accepted. Okay, but most states still require unanimity. So you have to win the guy over. So sometimes you will find that within the jury, right, some people can argue, can win people over, that can swing, okay, can swing the opinion. So for any kind of case, legal case, if you pick the right jury, you will win the case. I serve, in a translating case, so I know all the stories behind it. It's interesting, especially the one because a juror is supposed to be impartial, right? Objective, doesn't have any opinion about the case beforehand. So, and the juror should not read anything or watch television, so that will affect your judgment. I remember the judge instruction to the juror, say, do not watch television. Okay, nowadays will be what? Do not go on net, right? And do not read newspaper. And if you do have to read newspaper, ask your family member to cut out the news about this case, so that you will not be exposed to. You only listen to what they said in the court. And if you have any doubt, then you should not, place the person, convict the person. So, but some people just this is what I have difficult time understanding Americans sometimes. They are very loyally following the judge's order. They say, oh, cannot talk. Go home. Hey, cut out that part. That part reporting on this case. I don't want to read that part. I don't want to be affected. I want to remain objective. I want to serve my civic duty as a good juror. So that's the jury system, trial by peers. Okay. Number 8. This is the one people saying America has a big problem, because here you have cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, so you can be punished, but cannot be cruel and unusual. So the question is capital punishment cruel and unusual? What is capital punishment here? Xuanli, what is capital punishment? Money, capital, pride. 被钱压死. That's so unusual, so cruel, right? What is it? Death penalty. Okay, is death penalty cruel and unusual? Yeah, is it? Death penalty, do you think is cruel to the person who have been convicted the crime? If he kills someone, shall he be killed as well?
Maybe the common law should do something for this society.
To reform the person? You believe in love and education to reform and make this person useful? But what happened if he had killed people? And he was boasting. He said, wow, that was a great feeling. Gosh, Should we kill him?
I think it depends on the situation.
Okay, so should we abolish death penalty regardless of any kind of crime the person committed? No. Okay. So then you still support some kind of keeping this punishment. But this is, some people say American, at least in America, they say, hey, Constitution said we should not have that. That's unusual. That's cruel. Especially, think about all the ways people can be killed. Can you name one of the death penalty? Or how many ways you can be killed by the government, by the state? I don't think they use what do we call this? Suddenly I lost that word. The French system. What do we call? Anyone remember 断头台? What is it? Suddenly. Okay, I don't think we use that one. But we have shooting squad. Do we still have that? Mostly, what kind of death penalty do we have? Gunshot. Hey, that's a waste of bullet. Okay, what else? Lethal injection. Okay, that's one. Electric chair. Hanging. Hanging saves money. Right? Okay, but every time you will see some people who do not like death penalty, right? There will be a gathering outside, the execution of a criminal, and report and their observation of what happened. What would be the best argument you think against death penalty? 可以啊。
我觉得就是对于还有人性的人，我觉得。
But what happened? He pretend. Oh, I'm sorry.
就是看他在犯罪的时候，就是他是不是保有人性？比如说，有一些人是因为愤怒或是惧怕。
Well, I don't think they would get death penalty. If they are out of a rage or something, usually, there will be maybe, 30 years or something, right? But hey, it's purpose, premeditated, 预谋的, right? Using all kinds. Those are very bad ones, right? Your university had a case, right? No death penalty.
我觉得在犯罪时，如果是他已经没有人性的时候，那我觉得。
But how do you judge? People can pretend to still have some kind of humanity. They apologize, and then, hey, I got this, lesser sentence. I think the best case to, say we should not have death penalty is sometimes you will sentence a wrong person. And what happened if that person was killed? You can never return him or her to life. So death penalty has this one big problem, especially if your legal system, the policeman just try to frame someone. You know framing? Framing 中文什么？设圈套哈。Okay, get someone just saying, hey, this guy, anyway, he's a street bum, just put him there. So we can have someone to close the case. And you close the case, you kill a worthless person, but still, that person was not guilty, was innocent, but nobody cared about him. The case closed, it's good, but the real criminal was still at large. So death penalty, sometimes people say you do kill the wrong person, and that's the reason they don't want it. Okay, and big debate now. Okay. Also because of the punishment here, and people said, hey, you cannot have torture. So again, we have to have the due process to get evidence. Evidence, forced, illegally obtained evidence cannot be used in the court. For example, maybe, we have this student committed a crime, but we have no evidence. So what do? I sneak into his house and get his blood sample, and then put it on the scene and say, I found something here, right? maybe it's him. But if the evidence is illegally obtained, cannot be introduced in the court. Okay? So that's very important to prevent policemen from using that. But again, some law enforcement people said, oh, we have been, not able to do our job. We have to follow all kinds of procedures. Then we cannot do our job. Because, hey, some people, if you just torture him, he will tell the truth. Right? Like the Americans torturing the Iraqi soldiers in Guantanamo Bay or in Iraq, but by what? By making a leash on them, like walk a dog. Have you seen that picture of American female soldier? Hey, it's not a male soldier. Oh, it's a female soldier, a woman soldier, chain an Iraqi soldier like walking a dog. You humiliate the person so much, he will tell you the truth. So torture cannot be used. Okay? That's protection of individual right. I think most people will agree. And number 9, number 10, just saying, the rights not, listed here, hey, doesn't mean the people don't have it. Okay, the reserved for the people. Number 10, reserved for the state. So those are, the first 10 amendments is all about individual civil liberties, their rights as an individual. And the next view, we will see some changes. But remember this, United States, 230 years of history. 1787, you have the Constitution. And then 4 years later, you have this Bill of Rights, right? 10 of them. And then from 11th Amendment to now, we have 27th Amendment. So 17 more amendments in the next 230 years. That's very few. It's almost like what? Every 10, 15 years, you pass one amendment. They need to learn from Taiwan. We have constitutional amendments, like 5 of them in 6 years. We're very good at doing, changing our constitution. They are not. They don't want to tamper with their constitution. I don't know why. Okay. Let's take a break. Okay. Number 12. Amendment number 12. Very interesting, but I don't think we will spend time today because it's quite complicated. But number 13, 14, 15 passed right after Civil War. Okay, so the first one, number 13, we call abolish slavery in the United States. Right after Civil War, Lincoln, emancipation, so abolish one. Number 14, talk about the citizenship. And very interesting here, look at the second, section 2. Here we have representatives should be appointed along the several states. And the people right now become more. You have more people now because the Indian, the blacks who are now emancipated, free, they can be a regular citizen instead of 3/5. So this is very important. 13, 14, 15, especially in the 14, talks about no one, okay, should lose their property, liberty, or life without due process of law. So that's the one. 未经正当法律程序. Okay. You cannot be deprived, be taken away your life, your liberty, and your property. So anything that is not following the due process, like our conviction of our former president, if not under due process of law, his liberty should not be deprived. Okay. So sometimes people say we have people in the prosecution purposely not following the due process of law. And later maybe, this can be thrown out saying, oh, you didn't follow the due process of law, So this case can be dismissed. Okay, so that's due process. Very important idea. And then number 15, voting rights. And now the black people have the right to vote. So very important. You cannot discriminate. A person's right to vote should not be abridged. Means abridged by what? Any state because of your race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Means if you were a slave before, now you're free, you have the right to vote. We mentioned that right now the slave, the former slaves after Civil War, really later can vote, but they use all kinds of other means to prevent them from voting, like literacy test. Okay, that's 13, 14, 15. And then 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, this is the one we call progressive amendment. So 13 to 15, Civil War, okay, amendments. 16 to 19, we call progressive amendments. Okay, this is at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. There was a progressive movement. People were upset with the industrialization, with the excess of what we call capitalism. And so the first one, America in the 16th Amendment finally introduced, we call, right, the income tax. That's very important. Before, just based on tariff. 17th Amendment, the senators are directly elected. Before, how were senators elected? By individual state assembly. A lot of buying of votes. Okay, so people said we should be the one who vote for the senator as well. So direct election of the senator. So that's the 17. 18. Ooh, the Americans suddenly said the drinking is bad. So no more, manufacturing and sales of alcohol. Look at this number 18. Terrible here. After 1 year, any manufacturing, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquor, will be prohibited, and so that's very puritanic type of, almost like dictating what you can do. This is 1918, and then 15 years later, in 1933, this is the amendment has been abolished by another amendment called 21st Amendment. Okay, this is only happening in American history one time. 18th Amendment abolished by 21st Amendment. People say this is crazy. It's a little bit like in Taiwan said, "Thou shalt not play mahjong." How can you prevent people from playing mahjong? We even have a television right now, right, broadcasting mahjong, and there is a mahjong contest. How many of Tsinghua students actually went to the mahjong contest? And right now, I have received a lot of messages saying, Professor Yan, you need to play mahjong when you get old. They help you to stop the process of, some kind of, becoming more older, or, your forgetfulness. Mahjong will help you, right? So, but they said drinking liquor. A lot of movie made about this. One of the movie is, I think, about Brad Pitt movie is about this, and there was a movie, Martin Lawrence is about this. A lot of movie about this period from 1918 to 1919 to 1933. We call it the Prohibition period. 禁酒时期. And after the amendment was abolished, President Roosevelt, who actually drank a lot of wine, he got the wine outside his office and then celebrate. It's already there. A lot of what we call moonshining. People are in Taiwan. We used to have that, right? We only have one government license liquor producing, but there are a lot of people. They make wine themselves, especially people in the prison. Oh, they know how to make wine from some of the fruits. You can do it. So right now you can go out to buy any kinds of wine in Taiwan, privately manufactured or made. Right? So this is 18 being abolished. Number 19 is also an important one because that's the one make the women to have the right to vote. Whew, think of this. Free women cannot vote until 1920. Before that, 60 years ago, almost, 55 years ago, the blacks, the former slave, emancipated, and they have the right to vote, but women did not have the right to vote. Okay, America, was it behind other countries in terms of women to have rights to vote? Somewhat. Okay, they started in the 19th century. America has some of the states women can vote, and you will not know which one. This one, the first states that women have the right to vote in the local election are from here, from Montana, Wyoming, the West. Okay, probably I'm just thinking, probably because there are less women there. They don't think the women's vote means something. Okay, cannot affect. Okay, but they were the first one to have the rights to vote. And Great Britain, Australia is the first country to have the right to vote, and then Great Britain and other countries. Japan, 1925. Okay, women have the rights to vote. I think China is even earlier than U.S. and Japan. But one of the reasons why would people prevent women from voting? Let's get a lady to answer this. Okay. Let's try my Lin Yuhan. Yeah. Why women should not vote before? What's wrong with women voting? See, you're so emotional. You only voted for the nice-looking guy like Ma Ying-jeou, right? So what a mistake, huh? You're not based on facts. You're based on emotion when you vote. So that's the reason men do not trust women to vote objectively. Why would people prevent women from voting? What's the excuse? Can you give me a good one? Okay, maybe less educated. Okay, but what happens if the former slaves can vote? And if they do not have the opportunity for education, what happens? Okay, so what can we use education? Then hey, if women can pass a literacy test, then they should be able to vote, right? So that's one. I think the other reason, really serious, it's about trusting women's objectivity in terms of voting. When I went to the United States for my PhD program, the first test we have was why women were voting for a handsome candidate. Okay, they give you the real number. Like okay, right now, you look at Obama and you look at McCain. Like there's no comparison. Okay. So are people, women, and you do find, Clinton and George Bush Sr., his father, was at that time 68 years old, and Clinton 46. Clinton sleek, right? Talking nice. So all the women being fooled, but that's fine. They still voted for Clinton. So is that the reason, all these conservatives say, whoa, wait a second, women cannot be trusted. But anyway, it's a campaign for a long time. Okay, those people who want women to have the right to vote, this word, right? You have the right to vote is called enfranchise. F-R-A-N-C-H-I-S-E. Okay, this is enfranchisement. Okay, so this is we call what? I don't have anti here. Okay, this enfranchisement. What is it? Because I think there are too many strokes for me. 褫夺公权. Okay, means you cannot vote, right? Disenfranchisement. Now that's one word, to enfranchise people to have the right to vote. Okay, and make sure, did I spell this one right? Anyone have dictionary? S-U-F-F-R-A-G-E-T-T-E, R-E-G-E-T-T-E. Suffer. I think it's an A. Okay, yeah, it's A. Okay. This is the right to vote. It's called suffrage. And people will talk about universal suffrage. Okay. Universal suffrage. So universal suffrage means what? Every person have the right to vote. Now, in American history, first 1865, Amendment number 15, right? The former slaves now can vote. And then Amendment 19, women can vote. And then Amendment 24. Okay, 24. You have people who fail to pay poll tax. Now you can vote. I mean, it's like you don't have to pay tax in order to vote. Okay, and finally, Amendment 26. People 18 can vote. 18 to 20 used to be 20, right? Now it's 18. In Taiwan, what do you think? Do we need to have people 18 to vote? Lin Zhenghao. Yeah, what do you think? Right now, 20, right? But 18 you can have a motorcycle driving license, right? Riding a motorcycle license. How about driver license, also 18? Right now, both the same? Motorcycle not 16, 18. 18, okay. Now, so if you have a driver license, if you have a motorcycle license, why can't you vote? There are two different things. Why? You think 18 and 20 make a lot of difference? No, I'm talking about people 18 cannot make good judgment to vote. You think it's possible. So why don't we push our government to have people 18 can vote? Okay, funny thing in America is you can drink liquor only after 21. Right, but you can vote at the age of 18. And even funnier, you can have a driver license at 16. And then my son got a learning permit at the age of 14. Like the first thing when he became 14 is go to get a driver a permit. Right? Then his brother is 16, sitting right next to him. Gosh. My wife said, "Oh, what a relief! I don't have to drive my kids around." I said, "But do you trust them driving?" Okay, 16 and 14 are driving. But 18. Okay, so this is a young one. 1972. During the Vietnam War, young people felt, hey, if you can draft me after 18, I need to vote. Okay, during the Vietnam War, the government can draft someone who is 18 years old. That's an adult, and draft you to serve in the military. You said, no, I don't want to. I'm sorry. You have to. So finally, you have the right to vote, and vote for someone. They don't. Those people who support their cause. So you have all this on the voting rights, right? And universal suffrage, not suffering. Okay, suffrage is a good word. Having the right to vote. So now you have suffragettes, means women who try to promote women voting. We call suffragettes. Okay. So that's 16 to 19. And then there were a lot of amendment about the presidency. Okay, we already have one, 12. I'm not going back there. I will go back later. But 20th Amendment. Okay, 20th Amendment move the inauguration and the election time a little bit closer. Okay, right now in Taiwan, when do we elect our president? Liu Youzhang, Zhang Zicheng. Yeah, when do we elect our president? Like Ma Ying-jeou was elected when? March. When did he take office? May. So about what time? How many days altogether in between? Two months, right? March 18 or 20, and then May 20. Always May 20. I don't know why my university, our school anniversary is on May 20. Such a political school. 政治大学庆祝校庆也庆祝我们新总统当选。Okay, so that's May 20, right? 就任总统。We also have our school anniversary. Now, that's 60 days. America right now, what is it? 郑立伟. Yeah. When is American election? When was Obama elected? They have the election was held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday. Okay? In what month? For example, the first Tuesday after the first Monday of that month. So it's in November, right? But if November 1st happened to be a Tuesday, then it cannot be that day. Has to be November 8th then. Okay, but if November 1st is Monday, then election can be November 2nd. Okay, so the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November. And when did Obama take office? January 20. Okay, so what's the difference again? The time lag. Can you do the math? November, first week of November until January 20, about 2 months, 2 months and 10 days, maybe 10, 15 days at most, right? 2.5 months. Okay, let's give it 2.5 months. Taiwan, we have 2 months. Now, America, originally, election always is November, okay? But inauguration of the new president is March before, like March, 20. So, you have to wait 4 months. Anyone heard about some of the appointment last year when the DPP lost the presidential election, and the president who already is going to step down, he actually appoint certain people to position that they're only going to serve maybe for 2 months or less than 2 months, or they might be able to start a new position which should not be there. Because you have a change of presidency, you have a change of party in power, but suddenly you enter office, they say, sorry, hey, the previous government official already took up all this position. Way back in American history, John Adams lost the election to Jefferson in 1800 election. Okay? And John Adams, before the day before he left office, was still writing appointment. So a lot of these judges were appointed by John Adams the day before he left office. So I think if you give such a long time, this transition is not good. Okay, so that's the reason they shortened the period of time to 2 months, 2.5 months. But 2.5 months is enough time to have a good transition. People are ready. 李维豪，古文家。Do you think 2.5 months is good enough? But why our government is in a chaotic situation? But they said they were ready. 我们预备好了。So you gave them 2 months to do the transition. Not very good. So should we expand to 4 months? 6 months. Oh yeah. Okay. So, but at least that's what they try. Okay, to shorten the period of transition, right? So we have this 20. They call, what do they call? 跛鸭官员. What do you mean by 跛鸭? Lame duck. Huh? What do we call lame duck? Means you already have no chance for re-election, but you're still in office. For example, Tsinghua University. Currently, do you have your president now? Has your 陈校长有被在任命吗? No? Okay. Now, even if he was reappointed, okay, he only can serve 2 terms, right? So the beginning of the 2nd term, in a way, he is lame duck. Okay, that's what we call lame duck. 跛鸭 means like Clinton, when he stepped down from his office at the end, after 2 terms, the last few months, everybody know you're not going to be the next president. He said, well, okay, has nothing else to do, so he was riding bicycle. Have you seen, anyone seen he was riding bike within the White House? Like, oh, I'm stepping down. I'm a lame duck president. I remember serving, the president of my university. I thought, what are you doing? Because he is going to step down, like let's say in October 1st. Okay, September 30, he still want to receive, visitors from another university from United States. I said, well, what are you going to talk about? You're going to step down tomorrow. Why are you still receiving guests? But who knows? You just, hey, this is my last day as president receiving a guest, right? Everything I say is useless, but I still want to say it. By the way, university president, people say they are just like, people who watch the graveyard. You understand graveyard? Keepers of graveyards. 墓园 means there are a lot of people under you, but nobody is listening to you. Okay? Especially all those we call professor without portfolio. All those 杨春教授最凶。副教授还不太敢凶， because they are associate professor. They still want it to be promoted. Oh, the full professor, and they don't have if they are a chair of the department, they want to make sure the president will give some funding to their department. If they don't get the funding, it looks bad on them. So they still serve the president. But most of those professors without portfolio, they just shout to the president. So nobody is listening to him. That's we call lame duck. And the 21st one we already mentioned, right? Abolishing the 18th. Okay, the 22nd Amendment is interesting here. Why? American history, we already mentioned they were serving 2 terms president. No one served more than 2 terms. But constitutionally, you can serve more than 2 terms. But somehow, George Washington stepped down after 2 terms. So, John Adams lost the election to Jefferson. Jefferson 2 terms. Madison 2 terms. Monroe 2 terms. People almost say, oh, all this great president only serving 2 terms. So probably that's the limit we should serve. Okay, Andrew Jackson and later. So that's the president we call president 先例, 前例. Okay, it's a little bit like our Qianlong Emperor. What did Qianlong Emperor say about serving as emperor? He said, oh, Kangxi, my grandfather, served 61 years. I served 60 years. I'm not better than him, so I have to step down, right? And after he stepped down, he didn't die in office. He stepped down and become what we call 太上皇 for 4 more years. Because he doesn't want to have a longer tenure than Kangxi. So most of the presidents say, I cannot have a longer tenure than Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Jackson, all those good presidents, until Roosevelt, World War II, right? He's a good president, but the Republicans said, what happened if the Democrat got a popular guy, and then, we're not going to make nothing for us. We don't have anyone to compete against him. So Roosevelt won 1932, 36, 40, and 44, and then in 45, 3 months, 2 months, a few months into the office, he died. So he served about more than 12 years. And the Republicans got scared. So they said, why don't we change the Constitution and say, only 2 terms. Okay, only 2 terms. And then they won the election next time. Okay. But Eisenhower, at least he was old. Okay, Reagan became president, was popular, but when he stepped down, he was old, so that's fine. At that time, some Republicans said we should not change that Constitution, probably. Okay, but then the Democrats have Bill Clinton for 8 years. They said he's still young, he was popular, but he cannot run. Okay, so right now you have 2-term president. But what happened if you say, hey, I became president because the president died in office. I was the vice president, so how long can I serve as president? You said 2 terms, but I already served half. So if your president died less than 2 years into office, sorry, you can only run for 1 more term. So, because if you run for the 2nd term, okay, which means 8 plus 2 more than 2 is over 10. They said you cannot exceed 10 years. So, if the president died like 3 years later, okay, that will be fine. You only serve 1 year as president, then you can have 2 more terms. Interestingly, after this one, because this one did not apply to Truman. Because President Truman, the vice president, became president in 1945, 1945. And then he won again in 1948. So in 1952, this is more than, if he's won, he will serve until 1956, the end. So almost more than 10 years, right? But here it says what? that does not apply to the current president. Okay, I want to mention, where is it? Okay. These articles, okay, should not prevent any person who may be holding the office of president now. So it means Truman, who is holding the president, you say, hey, suddenly you change the rule. So doesn't apply to him. So he can run in 1952, but he didn't. Kennedy died in office, and then Johnson became president. Johnson won in 1964. Is he qualified to run for 68? Yes, because Kennedy died in 63. So only one more year as vice president became president. So, and then he won the 1964 here, 5 years, and he can run in 1968. But because of Vietnam War, he was so unpopular, he decided to withdraw. He didn't run. Okay, so that's a very interesting one for president setting. We call term limits. Okay, I just want to say one thing here. Why the president have term limits? Why not the prime ministers in the West European countries? People like Tony Blair, people like this Helmut Kohl of Germany, or Howard of Australia. They served more than 3 terms, right? More than 10 years as prime minister. Prime minister, no term limit. So why do president have to have term limit? Okay, so some of the African countries said, hey, we need to abolish the presidential term limit. So they are everywhere. You see all what African countries are abolishing the 2-term limit. They said this is this is not democratic, because what happens if you have a real good person after 2 terms? He's still young, he's still energetic, he wants to serve. Oh, that's what's the word? Disenfranchisement. You 自夺公权嘛, right? He wants to serve. You do well. But the funny thing here for me, I just wrote an article about this. I said they can all change the Constitution to remove the term limit, but that should start from the next president, not for himself, right? Here, when they set up the term limit, doesn't apply to the person at the time in office. So when you remove the term limit, also you should not apply the person now in office. So, but haven't seen a case in Africa say, well, I will step down, but I don't like this idea of term limit. I will change the Constitution, but it doesn't apply to me. Every time it applies to them. Okay, so that's the problem. So 2-term limits. Okay, the next interesting one is this one. Okay, 23 is about Columbia District of Columbia here. Washington, D.C. here. Washington, D.C. didn't have a representative, didn't have 2 senators. So, in a presidential election, their vote didn't count, because America is based on electoral college, and you have to have 2 senators and 1 president, 1 congressman. So at least you have 3 electoral college votes. And Washington, D.C., because they don't have senators, they don't have representatives, so they said, sorry, you voted, but that didn't count. 1964, they finally changed that, saying, well, we give you the minimum, like the smallest number of electoral college, 3. So Washington, D.C. began to have 3. Now, Washington, D.C., beautiful. They have been very loyal to the Democratic Party since 1964 until now. They haven't voted for a Republican Party candidate. Okay, because most of the Washington, D.C. residents are African American. African American, 90% vote for Democrats. No wonder the Republican didn't want that vote count. And now they have a new constitutional amendment saying Washington, D.C. should also have 2 senators. Now, what do you think those senators will be? Another 2 Democrats. So the Republicans said, no. It's a little bit like, the KMT, right? If we have, like Tainan County and Tainan City, combine the 2. So you still have the same number of, legislator. Then you reduce the number of pen ring, right? So it's similar. Okay, that's a 23rd Amendment. The 24th Amendment is about the poll right. We mentioned that one. But the 25th, this is the most interesting one because it's almost like a prophecy. You understand prophecy? What is a prophecy? Yeah, what is a prophecy? Prophet, people say, I can prophesize. I know next year, Tsinghua University will not get the top university award. That money will go to the 政治 University, my university. Okay. What is it? Prophesize. Predicting something. What is it? 中文什么？不是，是预先看到，预言，先知。Right. So here. This 25th Amendment, maybe I should turn off the light here. You can see better because this is a very important one. Okay. The 25th Amendment here said, what happened if the Vice President died? Okay, before all the President died, Vice President became President. But what happened if Vice President died? Or vacated. The office of the Vice President vacated. Like in Taiwan, what do we do? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to curse our Vice President. But what happened if our Vice President who is having cancer right now, if he passed away before 2012, what do we do? No, we don't have that. Constitution didn't say that. Okay, what happened if our president somehow incapacitated? Maybe he ran too much, okay? Suddenly collapsed, okay? And vice president became president. Who will be the vice president? No, we didn't have that again. Okay? Do you remember we have one vice president who became president? Li Denghui. Oh, wait a second. Li Denghui. Okay. Now, Li Denghui, right, succeeded as a president. Who was his vice president? Oh, that's after he ran. He became president in 1988. Li Yuanzhu was the vice president in 1990 election. So for 2 years, Li Denghui didn't have a vice president. He was so lonely. Okay? The same thing in American history. A lot of vice president became president. There was also one crazy vice president during Andrew Jackson period. His name is called John Calhoun. He resigned. He said, I don't agree with the president. He resigned. So you don't have vice president. And the president was lonely, right? All the vice president became president. He was lonely. So they said, well, why don't we find him a companion? So they changed the law. Okay, look at this. What happened if if the president died in office, of course, vice president became president, right? But if there's a vacancy in the office of the vice president, the president should nominate a vice president, take office confirmed by both of houses. Now, Lyndon Johnson became president after Kennedy assassinated in 1963. So he didn't have a vice president. So here someone said he was lonely. Okay, so they tried to change the law. So to have a vice president, so look at this, 1967, right? I think people have this in mind. Johnson didn't have a vice president for a year and a half. He didn't have a vice president. So they passed this, and then in 1972, Nixon was elected. You heard about the story called Watergate, right? Watergate. But even before Nixon resigned, his vice president called Speaker Agnew, A-K-N-E-W, Agnew, resigned because of corruption. So Nixon appointed Ford to become his vice president. And then what happened? Nixon has to resign because of Watergate. So Ford became president. Now, without this 1967 25th Amendment, which means Nixon, if Agnew resigned because of corruption, he would has a vacancy in vice president. And then he resigned. No president, right? So somehow, I mean, I think people like profit. I know something is coming, so we pass a law. And then we have a vice president being appointed. And then this vice president was not in the election of 1972, but he became president. So Ford became the first president not elected by people, right? Appointed by the president, and then the president himself was in trouble, resigned, and he became president. They almost like people look at the crystal ball, saying, well, in the next few years, we know both president and vice president will resign. So why don't we set up something here? Okay. We don't have that. We need to have that. Don't you think? You know, especially our vice president having cancer now. Do you think we should pass a law, you know, to appoint some vice president? And also, Chiang Kai-shek, his vice president, died in office as well. Chen Chen, you ever heard of Chen Chen? Okay, Chen Chen died in office in 1963, 64. But so Chiang Kai-shek was lonely for 2 years until 1966. Then he ran with Yan Jiagan, right? Yan Jiagan became vice president as well as premier, both positions. But that's only 2 years later. So also you have this problem. We never deal with that problem, and we have a big problem, especially our former government, the Pan-Green government. Annette Lu and Chen Shui-bian, they love to appear together. What happens if a bomb, you know, both die? Who will be the president? That would be a big trouble, right? So this is very much like a prophecy. Okay, 26, we already talked about this already, the 18 years old. And then finally, the 27th Amendment. Look at this. I love this one. This one, they don't have something here. It's called anti-self-enrichment kind of amendment. 反对自肥. You say, I want to be fair. No, you cannot. Okay, so the 27th Amendment said no law, right, for the compensation, changing the compensation of the senators or representatives should be taken until an election of them have intervened. Means you cannot change, say, oh, well, we want to raise our own salary. Sorry, you can raise the salary, but only for the after the next election. The next group, yes. You think you're poorly paid, fine. You raise the salary, but only for the you cannot raise your own salary. Okay, so 反自肥. So that's 27. Look at the time, 71 to 92, 21 years. You got one, and now another 17 years passed. Nothing. Okay, there are a lot of amendments, but they can never, because of the threshold. What do we call threshold? 什么是 threshold? Very important word. In Taiwan, we love this word, threshold. Most of you learned this word from 淝水之战. When Xie An hearing about the news, the rebels are being, the invasion has been, defeated. He passed the threshold. His shoes, somehow caught it. You remember this story? 有没有人读过淝水之战？打赢了谢安，喜不形于色，是吧？但是后来还发现他还是偷偷暗地开心，为什么？他过那个门槛的时候，木屐卡住断掉，太高兴，过得太快了。门槛threshold 就是门槛。So here, this is a very important thing. If you want to change the constitution, the threshold is very high, very difficult. The same thing in Taiwan right now. If you want to impeach a president, the threshold is very high. In Taiwan, I think we got so used to just walk. So, have you been to China? Going to all those palaces, passing that threshold, crazy. Why do they try to, make it so difficult for us, to walk? 你们有没有去看过那种大门槛这么高的？ Short people have a difficult time in China. Okay, let's see you next week.